Welcome back to week 6 of this amazing fall series. I hope by now you've got an idea that your life isn't just here randomly, but that God has you and this church here for a purpose. And so let's just talk about what those purposes are that we've talked about so far in the first 5 weeks. Do you guys remember? The first purpose is worship, then, say it with me, ministry, then evangelism, then fellowship, then discipleship. Those are the first 5. And then, the night before Jesus is executed on the cross, he gives us a 6th purpose that we're going to talk about today. And that's from John 13:34, where Jesus says this. He says, "I give you a new commandment, that you love one another, just as I have loved you. You should also love one another." Did you catch that? What Jesus' purpose is for your life and for this church, Grace Community Church, and all of you who are sitting here in this living room right now, his purpose is that you would love each other the way that he loved us. Okay, I want you guys to notice that Jesus didn't say, love each other just like the world loves each other. And the reason he didn't say that is because that's a totally different kind of love. And you hear it all the time. I love you, I love you. Even when we talk to each other. Dude, I'll see you later. Love you, man. And when I hear that, because I know that we don't know the limits of love until that love is tested, because I know that, I often go away wondering, is the love we're talking about the kind of love that the world offers? Or is it the kind of love that Jesus commands us to have, where he says that we're supposed to be willing to lay down our lives for each other? Or at least, even if we don't go that far, at least to be able to love and care for the other person, even if they don't live up to the expectations that we have of them. And the answer is, for most of us, when we talk about loving each other, we're not taking into consideration the extent of love that Jesus was commanding us to have when he demonstrated for us what that means. But think about what Jesus is commanding us to do. Commanding us to love each other the way that he loved us, which means he took off all his robes of authority, of glory, of omniscience, and he became a human baby, born into poverty, so that he could grow up and be nailed to a cross by the very people who he came to save. That's us. And he loved us anyway. And he's saying, guys, that's the way you are supposed to love each other. So how are you doing at obeying Jesus' command? To answer that, let me ask you this question. How bad would somebody in this room have to treat you for you to say, I'm out of here. I don't need this anymore. I don't need to be treated like that. Or how bad would somebody at Grace or one of us pastors have to offend you for you to decide, I'm never going back there? Guys, if our commitment to each other is so weak that we're willing to drop out of a community simply because somebody doesn't treat us the way that we think that we deserve, then we're failing to obey Jesus' command. Let me put it this way. You only love Jesus as much as the person who you love the least. Think about that. Let me say it one more time. You only love Jesus as much as you are willing to show love to the person who you love the least. So how are you doing at obeying Jesus' command? After all these weeks of talking about your purpose, purposes of your lives, the purpose of the church, of all those purposes, I think the one that's hardest for us to obey is this. Because the truth is that all around us, there's people who have offended us, people who have hurt us, people who have seen how imperfect we are and attacked us for it. And yet, Jesus still commands us to love them. People who have gossiped about us. Maybe there's people in this church or this group who haven't treated you with respect. They've looked down on you. Maybe they've taken from you. Maybe they've even hurt you in some other way. But Jesus says we are to love them the way that he loved us. Are you willing to do that? Are you willing to obey Jesus' command? And the truth is that we say, I can't even make myself love that person after what they've done for me. Yeah, that's right. And I can't reason you into doing that. I mean, when I was a kid, I remember hating eggplant. If you hate eggplant, how do you make yourself love eggplant? It made me feel sick. My parents could describe all the benefits, if there are any, health benefits, and why I should eat it. It didn't matter. I hated eggplant, and the thought of eating it made me gag. Now, the truth is there's people that you feel that way about. And maybe you don't want to feel that way, but just all the explaining in the world, all the reasoning in the world doesn't do anything to change the way you feel. So what do you do if you've got somebody in your life that you just don't like? You don't want to love them. You have trouble obeying this. Well, here, first bit of advice I want to give you is don't try too hard to make yourself love them. Instead, you focus on loving God, and you'll find that your heart changes. The Apostle John wrote in 1 John 5, 2 and 3, by this we know how to love the children of God, by loving God and carrying out his commands. It's a little bit of my own paraphrase, but that's what it means. This is how we know how to love the children of God, by loving him. You want to know how to love that person that you don't love? Stop trying so hard. You focus on loving God. God, I love you. I love you. Change my heart. I want to obey your commands. And what you find is that in time, he changes your heart towards that person. Secondly, confess your feeling toward that person as sin. 1 John 1:9 says, if we confess our sins, he's faithful and just, and he will forgive us our sins, and he'll cleanse us from all unrighteousness. He not only cleanses us from sin, but he takes the sin away. As we confess with him, as we agree with him, God, this is wrong. The way I feel about this person is wrong. I agree with that, Lord, but I can't do anything about it, but I'm sorry. And he cleanses us. Thirdly, Luke 6:28 says this. Jesus says this. Bless those who curse you and pray for those who mistreat you. Two parts of that. You bless those people who have been mean to you. And to whatever degree they have hurt you, you match that with blessing. In other words, if they scratched your car, when you notice that their car is scratched, why don't you offer to help them get it fixed? If they stole somehow $20 from you, the next time you have a chance, you bless them with $20. That's Jesus' way. And not only do you do that to prove that you're better than them, but you pray for them. And the way you pray for them is, Lord, would you help them to become a man or a woman who knows you and loves you more than anything else? You pray, you bless, and you pray. Guys, this is hard. But there's a reason why we're talking about this. There's a reason in the next verse in John 13:35 why this matters. And this is what Jesus says. Remember, this is just hours before they take him captive to put him on a cross. What Jesus says is, by this, all people will know that you're my disciples if you have love for one another. Guys, you know why it matters how you love each other? Because it is through that love that the world's going to know. Guys, my life is about the fulfillment of the Great Commission. I want every person in this world to know the forgiveness and the goodness of Jesus. We send all kinds of people overseas. We send money overseas. We're trying to complete this Great Commission. But Jesus tells us right here how it'll be done. He says that if the people who call themselves by his name will love each other to the extent of being willing to die for each other, he says that by this, everyone will know. Everyone will know. Guys, let's live our lives loving each other the way that Jesus loved us.
I'm so glad that you've been part of our fall series on putting first things first. It's been an awesome 6 weeks. And as I've been thinking about these 6 priorities that we focused on, I was reflecting back to how we first started Grace Community Church. Actually, we only had two priorities at the beginning. Priority number one really was worship, because we were thinking, how can we get God to come to our meetings? Because if we can't get God to come to our meetings, why should anybody want to come to our meetings? So worship became a priority for us, and the presence of God was obvious to all those who came. But we had a second priority, and that was learning to love each other. Because if we don't love each other, why should anyone want to come and be part of that? And so we really began to grow in loving one another, and more people wanted to be part of that. So let me just encourage you to continue to walk out these things that you've been learning. Be one who really worships God. Go after his presence. Be one who really ministers and loves your neighbors yourself. Be a fisher of men in evangelism. Be part of the family of God in fellowship, and try to make disciples of others. Help them grow as you're growing. And finally, let's learn to love one another so the world will know that we're his disciples.